On Taylor Kyle's back for another week, in case anybody was worried. He didn't go anywhere.
I didn't screw up anything too bad yet.
He
Still,
didn't
still
go.
kicking.
He didn't go anywhere, which is good. But we're just back to kind of reset the table here with the Patriots free agency. Talk to you guys about whatever it is that you're interested in. Give some insights on some of the latest buzz and rumors and discussions and trends. I think there's a few things that happened over the weekend that definitely kind of set a few pieces into motion, and I think paints a little bit of a clearer picture in terms of where things stand, which teams might be interested in what, and what things might cost. We are starting to get a kind of a better idea on that sort of stuff. But I'll kind of start in a general sense here, Taylor, and I'll then we'll start to dive into some of the more specific stuff. But before we do that, I should mention, and I want to mention to everyone, segment is powered by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. As you know, sports betting now legal in Massachusetts. If you're interested in that sort of thing, sign up at fanduel.com/Boston. Take advantage of this offer while it's still around right now. You're still getting the sign-up bonus of $200 in bonus bets when you deposit 10 and wager 5. I know because I did it. I took the plunge, made my first $5 wager on the Bruins on the puck line in the game that they won 7-0. Talk about a breeze,
Hey,
easy breezy,
nice.
introduction. That's the kind of stuff that gets you. But anyway, so that happened. So there we are. Check out fanduel.com/Boston. Fun, easy, really easy to navigate, easy to kind of see where you're going. So let's talk about, with the benefit of a weekend under your belt, and after the frenzy, and again, it wasn't a frenzy per se, but stuff moves fast. Players go off the board. Patriots did what they did kind of later in the week, a couple of plays. How did you feel just looking back on it on the overall haul? I know you tweeted something um, that definitely got a little bit of engagement, that low key Bill Belichick has been crushing the offseason.
Yeah.
Explain. And I'm
So
not
I think the
disagreeing, but yeah, I know where you're going with it. Yeah.
so the biggest reason I said that was mostly because of all the coaching changes. And I think the domino effect that's going to have on the roster and the players is the biggest thing. So I'm going to look at the tweet just so I make sure I don't forget anything. First thing I mentioned was O'Brien and Adrian Clem. Who actually liked one of my tweets when I mentioned it. It was really cool that, in a league that's lacking a lot of diversity, Gerard Mayo's looking like he could be the next head coach, and Adrian Clem, offensive line coach, is one of the most important in football. And you got two black men primed for pretty big roles, which is exciting, as I said, in a league that's kind of lacking in that department. But he liked it. So that's kind of a confirmation, even though he's not on the website, that he is definitely going to be on the team, although we all kind of assume that. But those guys, they make the offense better, especially Bill O'Brien. I think you get more discipline. You're going to get more out of Mac Jones, and you're going to be able to play to his strengths more. And the offense is going to have an actual rhythm and intent rather than kind of just being a cluster fudge of whatever was happening last year where there
You
wasn't
can't
really
say
any
cluster fudge.
consistency. I absolutely can say cluster. I just did. I just trademarked cluster fudge. But yeah, that was my biggest thing. It's the ceiling and the floor both raised with those guys. And then, as I mentioned, also Gerard Mayo. He's been lauded for his business acumen on top of being an amazing student of the game and coach and teacher and all those things. So I think having him just on the roster and being possibly the future of your franchise, especially with all the respect he's got in the league and his experience as a player, I think is a really exciting move. And just even keeping him, we're talking about this year specifically. So having him in tow continues the consistency on defense, which was exceptional last year. And it's just going to be a great move for the long term. And then on the defense, they kept everyone they could possibly keep. Obviously, Devin McCourty retired. Jalen Mills was cut, which also signaled, especially this early, he wasn't part of their long-term plans. So I think there you can be excited about a unit that, struggled against true number ones, but didn't have any other really glaring weaknesses, especially with the linebacker core they had, which we'll discuss later. They were never really so big of a problem that it was something that defenses picked on consistently. So you know that you're probably going to have at least as good a production as you had last year, if not better, after they add some more pieces. As we've discussed, they need kind of a longer corner. And obviously we still have yet to see what's going to happen at free safety. And then you got Juju, John Jones, and Gesicki below market value, which I think is exceptional. I know people like to splash hires and you want to see them spend a lot of money because when you see the tweet, it means, oh, they must really like this guy. But as we saw with Jonnu Smith and to a lesser degree, Hunter Henry, because he's been battling injuries, but still been on the field consistently for them, I think that's really something you want to see in terms of they're not overspending and they still got money in case they want to make a big move for a receiver. We have yet to see, but they've got that flexibility. And the special teams boost, which is the biggest one. Obviously, they gave up 2 return touchdowns against Buffalo. If you hadn't given those up, you'd think, okay, maybe the Buffalo still goes and scores a touchdown. Maybe they kick a field goal and there's still points. But at least you don't have to play from that far behind where you just let up 2 scores that, we know special teams giving up a score can be extremely exciting.
The special teams thing cracks me up, and I did want to address this comment real quick. Someone had said that they did upgrade best tight end, best receiver on the market. I mean, one step forward, one step back with Juju over Jacoby, but I think it's fair to argue that Juju is going to be, similar production, different sort of way, but might have been overall the better talent. And then Gesicki, I think Schultz is still the clear-cut number 1, but Gesicki, you did definitely get a weapon there. As far as the special team stuff is concerned, this cracks me up because, out of one side of your mouth, you have Patriots fans. The special teams was awful last year. What a disgrace. Blah, 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 blah. And then you see them spend on special teams and you're like, why are you spending all this money? I get it. And I really do get it because it's like, oh, great. He's the highest paid long snapper. Like, no, you don't want to have to do that. You want to, like what they did 2 years ago, they had to throw money at their weapons receiver problem because they had a massive hole. N'Keal Harry, a broken down Julian Edelman that wasn't going to be able to play, and basically nothing. So they had to do something there. You don't want to have to spend a lot of money on special teams. You just want it to be there. It's almost like when the roof on your house goes, you're like, God, I got to put money into this. But like, you're not excited about a new roof. Right. It's just a thing that you count on keeping the water from coming in. Same kind of thing with special teams. You're just counting on not giving up return touchdowns left and right. And and having a punter who can at least, kick it 40 yards downfield. They just didn't have either of those things last year. So it's understandable. It's very on brand for Belichick, kind of back to the whole good coaching, all 3 phases sort of approach. And that's what's going to happen. Right. But we get it. Want to let you guys know probably on the back half of the show, and we'll tell you when we'll start to take some questions. Don't throw them in now. They'll get lost in the chat, but definitely we want to hear what you have to say. Let's reset a couple of things here on the offensive side. We went into the week thinking, oh, there's some buzz here, right? The receiver buzz. There's discussions, there's even, those kind of unverified people that sometimes oddly get a lot of things right on Twitter, kind of talking about things happening. Nothing materialized. Nothing is particularly close, we don't think, but some concrete things did happen. And, one of them kind of involves very recently the Dallas Cowboys, who went and got Brandon Cooks. Okay. And I want to talk about what he was acquired for, because that'll tell you a little bit about the Hopkins market. But one thing that came out today was that they went really hard at Jeudy, but they didn't want to give up a first-round pick. And their first-round pick is lower than the Patriots' first-round pick. So if the Cowboys aren't giving up theirs, I don't think the Patriots are giving up 14 for a receiver. So if this is what's going to happen, it's going to hold, I think you can basically take Jeudy off the table.
Absolutely. And plus, like I've been saying,
if Denver's holding there, if they
are. And again, the Broncos have leverage. They don't need to trade Jeudy before the draft. So they can wait out as long as they want, see if a team is actually going to pay it once it gets closer to that time. But the Broncos are in no rush. So that's one of those, like, you can wait and see, but I wouldn't be refreshing my phone every second to see where Judy's going to go. And then, with Brandon Cooks, you saw that he was acquired for not a huge amount of assets, mostly because of his contract. And he is 1 year younger, actually, than DeAndre Hopkins, which seems impossible because Brandon Cooks has been in the league forever. Someone like Cooks is a fit in your offense. And it seems like the fact that he was acquired for so little is kind of a reflection of how the Patriots may feel about giving certain assets for a receiver who's in his 30s. DeAndre Hopkins had a tough situation last year because he missed a bunch of games due to suspension. Then he had an insane quarterback situation where Kyler Murray got hurt in the game against the Patriots, didn't play any more games that season, I believe. Pretty sure he missed the rest of it. Yeah, he did miss the rest of the season. So I don't think it's fair to look at his production because there was a numeric decline by most figures, even when you look at averages. But again, it's not a one-to-one comparison of the time he spent with Kyler Murray versus like him with Colt McCoy and whatnot. But I just think that unless it's something like, just a fourth or a fifth or something like that, like a day 2, day 3 pick, that's what they probably give up if you really want to get to someone like Hopkins. Other thing with Hopkins, although I do think he's a playmaker, I think he's that alpha that would really change the complexion of your offense. I feel that his skill set's redundant a bit with Devontae Parker. Now, he's more diverse, and he gives you longevity in the sense that Hopkins is usually someone who stays healthy, can play and show up in a lot of your games and make that impact. Whereas Devontae Parker has fantastic flashes, but as I said before, you can't really count on him to play the entire season, much less even 10 games necessarily, at least not healthy, and he's going to be on the field. You don't have to measure his snaps. So I think Jeudy is still the only guy where I'm like, yeah, I would give up a second or, possibly more, but I'm not giving up a first because you can get someone like Zay Flowers if you really like JSN or any of those guys. There's just enough people at that spot where I think you could comfortably take a receiver.
Not only that, I think you can trade down and get a receiver that you like as well out of 14.
Fair enough.
And then and amass even more draft assets, and thus allowing you to potentially trade later on in the draft if that's what the price was. Let's say you got an additional second rounder. Maybe you give one up here for Jeudy in the second, especially if you traded down for a different position. However you see fit. I still think the obsession over this story in all of these stories, and first off, I know you compared them in similar roles. If you brought in Hopkins, then I don't think anybody cares about Devontae Parker, truthfully. Meaning, if he gets reduced or cut, if that were the case, or dealt for a much lower pick or something like that, I think everyone here is fine. I mean, we got to be clear, like Hopkins is a far superior talent. And while they do the same sort of thing, and there is a bit of a redundancy, it's not that Parker's got it locked down in a set it and forget it sort of way. You can upgrade there too, for sure. Hopkins would be an upgrade. Plus also he has the best hands in the business. So,
it's about the capital for me. That's really it.
Yeah.
Because
it's the capital.
Similar skill set. It's, do you really want to give something up to get a guy who's 30, may not be as good as he's been at points in his career? It's if Hopkins were still like 28, that's a very different story. Well, it's just really the age and what you have to give up for him that makes it kind of tough.
And we're going to go back to the Cooks thing. That's kind of where it comes down to is you're talking about a fifth for Cooks. I really think you're starting to look at a fourth for Hopkins and a third at the absolute max. And even that I think is pricey. But I think you might be able to get a fourth and a fifth here. And this is kind of what it's going to come down to. And Arizona probably does want to get out from under this. They have Denver. Judy's not expensive. He's on year 4 of a rookie deal. You can keep him. If anyone wants to overpay, sure, everything's for sale. It's a make me move situation. Again, to use another house analogy, I'm not looking to move, but if somebody knocked on my door and said, "I'll give you $3 million for your house," I'd be like, "Yep, hold on, let me get my shit. Let me get out of here." Right. So, I mean, I understand the philosophy is sure, yeah, come at us. Anybody who really wants a receiver, taking advantage of a soft market, both in terms of free agency and the draft, yeah. You're not going to find one, so you're going to have to overpay for one. You want to overpay, you can have one of mine. I think that's fair, but I don't think it's a fire sale situation over there. So anyone waiting for that price to come significantly down, I think is probably going to be disappointed. That's my opinion on Jeudy.
And one other thing, and Jeudy, and again, he's got like the explosiveness that I think fans really want. Is it like it's a name and then there's what they're actually going to bring to the offense?
Yeah.
I just don't see Hopkins as being, again, he's a fantastic receiver, and I'm not trying to talk crap about DeAndre Hopkins, but he's not giving you that crazy downfield threat. Like when he's catching passes downfield, it's usually on back shoulder fades or where he's just going up and grabbing it, but he's not a home run threat like Jeudy, where he can go over a guy and then he can still keep his balance and take it all the way to the house, or, just take a quick pass and run all the way home. That's not quite DeAndre Hopkins' skill set. So I think that if they want to use capital, again, if it's a 4th round pick, yeah, go get him. That's just a no-brainer. But I just think that if you want to get that true alpha type who's really going to change your offense, you want that, the TyQuan Thornton, what you project his impact to be, but someone who's got the experience and the track record in the NFL to have done it, or at least, unlike, Thornton necessarily has a consistent college track record where you say, okay, they've done it at that level against good competition, or you just see what they put on tape. Now I interview him. How comfortable am I with him stepping into a bigger role? And then can he make that next step to the pros? So that's another thing with Hopkins. I think he's a fantastic player still, but he doesn't give you that explosive playmaker that it seems like they've been looking for recently.
Yeah, and you'd feel a lot different if Thornton didn't miss a good chunk of last season, and you actually
Mhm.
had the first part of the year to develop him, in the second half to
Yeah,
start to see some steps forward. The
for
problem
sure.
here is you have an unknown. You
Mhm.
have a guy that very well could give you what you're looking for out of a Jeudy,
Mhm.
playmaker, field stretcher, someone who can do a lot of things, for the offense and just be a dynamic big play guy.
Mhm.
You have no clue if you have it. So
Right.
that creates enough uncertainty here. I know, like, internally they've probably got a pretty good feel in what type of player they have, but until you see it, it's really hard to it's hard to bank on it. You can't just say,
Yeah.
well, I got Juju here and Thornton out there, and then Parker, we're good, man. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what their philosophy is. You talk about Broncos not needing to do anything. I don't know what
Mhm.
the Patriots think. That's kind of what I'm most curious about right now, Taylor, is
Mhm.
are they sitting there thinking like, we need something big, like we're not even close,
Yeah.
or are they like, no, we got it, we're good, we're not overpaying for anything?
And I think, like you said, you don't know for sure with Thornton. And I think
Because
that
2
they've
years
set
ago,
themselves
the
up to be in
Patriots
a
clearly tipped your hand. We know
Mhm.
we're effed, so let me just
Right.
throw money at everybody. I don't know what they think
Mhm.
now.
They
Yeah,
also had a lot of money at that point. Like I
they
think
did.
what gets lost in the whole like spending spree was that they had more money than they usually ever have because of COVID season, where they just had a bunch of players opt out and didn't spend a ton of it. So they had all this cash. And in the NFL, you literally have to spend a certain amount of money, or you get in trouble for not spending. So I think that's also part of the equation where they went out and threw money at people that people kind of underrate. But beyond that, I think they're still in a good position where, to Thornton's credit, he's posting workout videos like every single day. How that manifests on the field, we don't know. But he's at least taking the steps
How's
and
he
working
look?
hard. He's looking bigger. I'm not gonna lie. Like he's those chicken bones are looking like they got a little more meat on him these days. So that's a good sign for a guy who obviously struggles with. He's big, he's tall, but he's lanky, and you want him to be able to handle if somebody jams him, doesn't completely throw him off. More strength at the catch point, things like that, where he's shown flashes, but you still need to get muscle to be consistent at the NFL level. But even so, if Thornton struggles, they still have Kendrick Bourne, who was more of the Z last year when Myers would bump into the slot. So worst case scenario, your starters are probably Parker outside at X, Juju in the slot. Then you got Bourne and Thornton at Z. They alternate based on whoever's more consistent. And I
Yeah,
think you have a decent offense there. And if you want to go with 12 personnel, then you got Hunter Henry as your true inline guy, and Gesicki is your move tight end who can really just be all over the place because he's such a mismatch. So I think they have enough where if Thornton doesn't pan out, they're still going to have a competent offense. And I think it's going to be above average offense because of Bill O'Brien, like I said, and what he brings in terms of maximizing those skill sets. But obviously, Thornton taking that next step in year two, it gives you a lot more confidence where, okay, like this is someone we can move around, use his speed, and we don't just have to use him as a clear out guy. He's someone who we can actually rely on as
yeah.
a consistent receiver.
And that's the hope. And again, everything is the promise of a new day. But forgive me, and I'm sure several Patriots fans out there, if there isn't some skepticism about, like, good enough. That's kind of
Mhm.
where it's always going to come back to is give me more, more, more. And I think part of it has to do with, yeah, sure. Uh, O'Brien obviously is going to make a huge difference over what they had last year, but he's doing a lot of work in your scenario. Like you're talking about him doing Andy Reid level, Josh McDaniels level work of like being steps ahead of other teams and being able to scheme for a fair amount.
That's also what he's known for.
I
And he
know.
did it. And the whole like, oh, he did in college. Can you do it in the NFL? He literally went from
I
Penn State to Houston and immediately made them
I
a
don't
contender.
disagree,
So
and I actually think being able to do it in college is more impressive than doing it in the NFL because the
mhm.
college game tends to be a little bit ahead of the NFL in terms of trend
Yeah.
setting when it
hmm
comes to offense and creativity. So I'm
hmm
hopeful, but again, Bill O'Brien is a person who's been doing what he's doing for a long time, and he wasn't number one on every single person's list for offensive coordinator for each of the last 3 or 4 years. There's a familiarity here. There's a commodity, but I do think the expectation level on him to just come in and just be like a wizard who transforms and transcends a so-so group is putting a lot of pressure and expectation on him.
So two things. One, he was only at Bama as long as he was because he made a commitment. He told Saban, I will come in here because he's known for kind of coming into an organization and then pulling the plug on him a little bit once he gets another opportunity. Yep. He told Saban, I will be here. I think it was 2 seasons or something like that. He committed to being there for that long. That's why he didn't come back to the NFL. And I think him coming back to Mac Jones, to Bill Belichick, I think that was just a no-brainer. I don't think it's that we don't want Bill O'Brien. I think it was just such a perfect fit. And then I also – I'm not going to pretend I know what his market was outside of New England, but I don't think him being out of the league or being at Bama for as long as he did is any indication of what he can do. And that's also, he doesn't have to be a wizard. Like we've said, the Patriots, if they were competent last year, are a playoff team. If the offense doesn't constantly shoot itself in the foot with penalties, with just boneheaded plays like at the end of the Raiders game, there's so many times you can look at the offense and say all they had to do was not F up, and they at least don't lose the game. So I don't think it's all like, Bill O'Brien's pulling a rabbit out of a hat every week. I think it's, no, this is someone who can consistently give you a level of performance and preparation that they just didn't have last year. So that's really all I think it is. They have better talent. I think it's pretty unanimous that after losing Jacoby and Jonnu Smith, getting Gesicki and Juju in the mix with possibly a better TyQuan Thornton is a better receiving group. So not only did you upgrade personnel-wise, but it's the blackest of nights versus a nice shiny spring day when you're talking about going from Matt Patricia, never been an offense coordinator in his life, was an offensive line coach, I think, for like 2 years at the beginning of his Patriots tenure, to going to Bill O'Brien, who's worked with Tom Brady, all these Hall of Famers, Deshaun Watson, whatever as a human being, but he's a fantastic quarterback.
There's no doubt.
He's worked with talents and all these. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
No. You're 100% right. But as I said, we're looking at both Bill O'Brien to be transcendent in his role, and Mac Jones to be to take a step forward from his rookie year, forget about last year, even if he threw last year completely in the trash, and get himself into the top 10 conversation, which he's currently not. He's a very 15 to 20 range quarterback right now in terms of what we saw last year, which means he's got to step up. He's got to so you need O'Brien to be terrific, to be, as I said, transformative. And
Bill O'Brien needs to be Bill O'Brien.
To take a huge step forward to be able to get by with pretty good weapons if the scheme is there and everybody's coached up really well, and that's fine. But we've seen over the course of time, the 20 years, and the down years of the dynasty, every time they lost, it was because there weren't enough playmakers on one side of the field or both, even though they almost always had a coaching advantage over everyone who they played. When they got beat, they just got beat by the Jimmies and Joes versus the X's and O's. And it's, and Belichick would always say it, but you still want you don't want to lean so heavily only on coaching. I think you still want the juice. I think that's why some people are looking at it and saying, I don't know if any of these receivers is actually great. It's too unknown. We don't know what Juju is right now without Mahomes. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in 4 or 5 years. I don't know what TyQuan is at all. And Devontae Parker, we saw some of it last year. I'll let you respond to this in a little bit, but I still think there's more. I always say, Taylor, you want to enter seasons with the, we'll be fine unless, not we'll be fine if. When you're entering with a lot of ifs, that means a lot of things need to break your way. The unless is we've got it all locked down and we're good unless a bunch of things we didn't see happening happens. Patriots are in the we'll be fine if sort of thing, which is always, I think, a little bit more tenuous, which is why I think you want to lock down a little bit more personnel. I'll let you respond here on your thoughts. Just want to let people know once again, Massachusetts, listen up. Wait is over. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, now live in Massachusetts. New customers get in on the action. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, which I did. Bruins on the puck line, minus 1.5 against Buffalo. 5 got you 1160. Cha-ching. FanDuel.com/Boston. That's where you need to go. If you go there, you get that special offer. They know we sent you. It's good for us. It's good for you. So please do that if you are interested in signing up. FanDuel.com/Boston. Bet on all your favorite sports, money line, point spreads, player props, whatever have you. And don't miss your chance at that 200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. We do need to mention you have to be 21 plus and present in Massachusetts in order to participate. $10 first deposit is required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire in 14 days. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org. Once again, gambling helpline, ma.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. All right, tell me why I'm wrong.
Where do I start? All right, no, but in all seriousness, this is the offseason. Like, I know it sucks we have to wait as long as we do to even see these guys on a football field. But yeah, there's a bunch of ifs. Is TyQuan Thornton going to be this? Can Juju be an 800-yard receiver if they need to? We don't know, and we're not going to know. But I think it's still important to remember here's one thing about the offense last year. Like, just to put into context how incompetent they were. Andrew Callahan and Karen Gregian broke that the Patriots literally didn't have entire sections of their play action playbook because they didn't have time to install it. They thought they were going to be this outside zone team, despite the fact they didn't have the personnel outside of maybe two players to execute it effectively, which I think Cole Strange and Isaiah
Strange was one.
Fits in that. Right. And then you got Mike Nwenu, who's 350 pounds. You got David Andrews, who's kind of losing that top athleticism he used to have. Trent Brown, who's 6'1" he's just too big, and it didn't fit. So then when it didn't work and they couldn't do the boot action and all that stuff that they wanted to do with the Shanahan type system, they didn't have the pulling guards and the play action concepts that they usually rely on, with Mac Jones being more of a draft bot guy and their offensive strength being running in between the tackles. So even if you just take that element, like, remember how people were saying, well, why don't they ever use play action? At the beginning of the year, I thought it made sense because they were playing a lot of blitzing teams, which Belichick even acknowledged. I said before it was asked the question, I think it's just because, like, the first draft back of Mac Jones's career was a play action pass against the Dolphins where he turned around, there was somebody right in his face, he immediately got strip sacked and they recovered. I saw that and I was like, I don't understand why you would use play action against the Dolphins, because every time the Patriots go under center, they're sending rushers.
Yeah.
And Belichick said that was part of the reason where, well, if they're in man coverage, who are you trying to fool? They're not looking at you. Now, at that point, it made sense. Then you go in the year, and it's like, well, now they're playing guys who rush forward and play a lot of zone like the Jets, and they're just dropping back every time using the same plays. Now, again, where it's not even Bill O'Brien has to be some magician or he has to, completely transcend offensive football to make these guys good. Literally, just make sure that the install is appropriate. It's the same system that he, is used to and he can adapt to his players. Even Hopkins, they talk about how they don't like each other. Hopkins has said they're professionals. He respects Bill O'Brien. So at the worst case scenario, when you think of a situation like that, there's still a lot of respect for him. So there's going to be the unknowns. I think this is just part of the offseason where, hey, you look at how they can get better, not necessarily, expecting anything right now, because, TyQuan Thornton could be their number one. We don't know that. He could
Wouldn't that be great? I mean,
it would be fancy. And I think that's what they want. I think that's their goal.
Again, and as somebody put a comment up here earlier, which I thought was fair, TyQuan Thornton was eye-poppingly good in the early parts of camp last year. I was down there quite a bit in the early going, and it was really hard to take your eyes off him. It was interesting just how fluid he was. The things you were afraid he wasn't going to be able to do, like get off jams or get off the line, wasn't a problem. I mean, sure, he lost some, but he won some battles. And then his hands, he just brought everything down. It brought it in effortlessly. He didn't box anything around. He just looked fluid, and it looked like, okay, I can see that year of development being necessary, but you'll see flashes if this guy's on the field. There will be a couple of games he might go off. He might be the type of guy you're rushing to your waiver wire to get in fantasy football, because he'll have a couple of games where he pops off and does something, because he can be that kind of guy. Then he got set back with that when he getting hurt there, which was a bummer. Missed that time. Came back, was used on a couple gadget plays, some jet sweeps, things like that to get him into the end zone. And again, you saw flashes. Okay, good. Getting the ball in a playmaker's hands, terrific. Then he just disappeared with more snaps. And I think that's the lasting image for some people that give them some pause, because you could have written it off like a lost year because of the injury, and because sometimes Pats just basically redshirt offensive players. I think to
that it stands out how much they used him.
They entered camp absolutely thinking, I like this guy's going to play. You could see just the groups he was playing with. He was getting first team reps. They're like, they have a plan for him. They really did. But then when you did see him playing later in the year and doing nothing, you wonder how much of it was scheme. I don't know how many times you got a chance to look at tape back then, Taylor, and say that, they could have gotten him the ball more. They just didn't, in those games. I'm not really sure what was going on there, but he just kind of disappeared, despite the fact that they were trying to get him in there a little bit more ahead of a guy like Aguilar and give him a shot. He didn't really make the most of it in the last few games.
Absolutely. And I think there were a lot of factors there. Now, one, he's still a rookie receiver who was learning an offense that even the veterans were like, I don't get. Like, Jacoby Myers was very vocal about being like, I don't really get why we're doing this. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Matt kept saying, oh, we're buying in, we're buying in, we're buying in. But it was very clear that the offensive players were like, I don't know what's going on here. So you got to give him a little bit of credit, TyQuan Thornton, a little bit of credit for that. There's also what I mentioned in one of our past shows. When players are preparing for the draft, they put their bodies in a type of shape that is not conducive to playing in the NFL. It's conducive to performing at your peak physical level in shorts and a t-shirt. So a lot of guys, obviously you have plenty of players who go off in their first year, and that is its own case. But with the guy like TyQuan Thornton, who had those physical limitations that you were kind of worried about, now he has an entire offseason to specifically focus on those with the Patriots training regimen and everything specifically tailored to him. They're one of the best teams in the league at that, as far as I know. And he understands where he struggled, how he can improve. But at the end of the year, there was also a consistency element of it where, like, Mac threw him some dimes downfield where you're like, okay, this is what we want to see. We want this guy getting 40-yard chunks with his speed. But he wasn't always coming through. He wasn't making catches that he should have been making, where you would expect that to at least be his bread and butter. So it's consistency, it's scheme consistency as well, outside of just his execution. A lot of things were in that pot where you understood, okay, they're kind of leaning on their veterans more. They're still giving him chances, but he's not really following through. So it's understandable why they're not featuring him the way that we saw, in his game against Cleveland when he came back, or even in the preseason, where, as I mentioned, he was used a lot in the Jacoby Myers role in run personnel groupings, where he's inside the box, fitting up against safeties and things like that, where you're saying, okay, he may be undersized, but they have a role for him where they want him to be the featured player in their offense. Again, we'll see whether that comes to fruition or not. But like you said, in camp, the skill is there. Now, year two, in better shape, understands a clearer, more well-constructed offense. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And so, again, just continue on it. He turns into the number one. Everything is great. Mm-hmm. And nobody has to worry about anything. If
everything's perfect.
Mac Jones being the quarterback, obviously everything, a lot is going to rest on him, but I do believe, a lot of people just think naturally, just based on being in a better situation, he'll at least be able to elevate himself to serviceable, and if not solid. And who knows beyond that. Thornton might be the most important player on this roster, honestly, because if he comes out and he looks and he's he's the guy, that changes a lot, for what the offense can do. So yeah, not to put that much pressure on him, but there's definitely a lot that he can do. So I know this is your least favorite conversation. I'm just throwing it out there one time. Okay. There is no Lamar Jackson market.
Yes.
And I know people do this for clicks and content, and I swear I'm not doing it. I just find it interesting only because there's been so many times in our history where the entire, rational-minded media intelligentsia, or whatever it is, the media industrial complex that covers the Patriots will tell you, no, never. Yeah. What I find interesting is there's not a lot of no, nevers, and I wonder if that's a case of fool me once, going on there. But now you've got a couple ESPN insiders, and I know a lot of this is just simply for content, continuing to list the Patriots as dark horses here, as different teams that, don't rule them out. Don't rule them out. Don't rule them out. Longer this drags, the more it's hard to not. It's that luxury item. Do you need this? It's a need versus a want. Do you need Mac? Do you need Lamar Jackson? I don't know. Do you want him? Kinda. So it's that shiny sports car. I don't know. That would be interesting as hell. So leave all of the likelihood scenarios aside. If Lamar Jackson was gettable, how intrigued would you be?
He's Lamar Jackson, dude.
And how much does it affect and change what they currently have? And is this the type of team that can you go full Lamar when you've been built the way the Patriots are built? You're a team that's built presumably around a not mobile precision quarterback. Can you just switch to a guy who, is more of a freestyler, can let it fly, and obviously is going to completely change the complexion of your running game?
In terms of whether they can or should, I think they could. I think the best strategy is always to find a way to put your best players in the best position to succeed, which means that Lamar Jackson obviously wouldn't run the same offense that we saw from Mac Jones. I don't know how quickly Bill O'Brien would be able. Actually, no. Bill O'Brien's had Deshaun Watson. I think he has plenty of experience using the type of concepts that Lamar would be familiar with. Like we saw how McDaniels did with Cam. Like they never ran that type of offense, and then he comes in and it looks completely different. With their offensive line, considering obviously Riley Reef, he'd like to upgrade there, but he's still a solid player. They have the versatility to run different schemes, and if you want to say, hey, we're going to be like really more than ever emphasize this downhill power running game and use Lamar Jackson, they've got the weapons. I don't think it'd be the hardest thing to do from a personnel standpoint. I think really the difference comes in, well, you got Mac Jones in his third year. If he's good, then you get his fifth year option. There's so many things. The locker room likes him. Devin McCourty even spoke about Mac and what he thought of him. And he said the locker room loves him. And the only reason they ever even considered Zappy, it wasn't really a performance thing. It was just they were kind of getting pulled left and right and they were confused. But Mac unanimously has a locker room and there's a lot of faith in him. And especially he was saying in his rookie year, they were shocked by how good Mac Jones was. And that's why he took the job from Cam. When it was reported, I think it was Lombardi who said this, but they didn't want a situation where there was a quarterback feud and people didn't know who exactly to get behind. Even if they went into the season and Cam Newton was a starter, and then they're saying, "Oh, but Mac Jones, these kids are really good," and people are starting to gravitate towards him. So obviously, year two was tough, but I think it's important to remember that after the first year, people were gung ho, being like, "All right, Mac Jones really could be that guy." And I just feel like it would cause an unnecessary shakeup where unless you're trading Mac Jones, like I think Lamar is someone who comes in the locker room and no one's going to question it. People love him. He's a great guy. Obviously unanimous MVP, so he's got the talent. No one's going to be like, well, what about Mac? This is so effed up. But I just don't think it's necessary when you've got a guy who you think could be the kind of player that fits your scheme and who can excel if put in the right position. So yeah, we are both of the understanding that it's very unlikely. There's like a 2% chance it happens, but obviously he was a unanimous MVP, great locker room guy. You don't not want those guys on your team, but I think it would be so unnecessary.
Yep. And I do agree. And I think something really to consider in terms of everything that the Patriots do right now is kind of where they're headed right now. It's an interesting roster when you look at it in the sense that it's got, you've got some holes you're plugging for this year. If you look ahead to next year, I believe there's only 35 guys under contract heading into 24. Mm-hmm. That's a really low number. Yeah. And the amount of money that is guaranteed on the books or that you can't get free of is they're going to have a zillion dollars in cap space next in 24 also. Mm-hmm. This, whether people want to admit it or not, this very well could be a complete pause, like a complete hold the line, waiting for a large reset that could be coming at some point. And you do wonder how that's going to come into play, but just something to consider just in terms of the overall roster building. Because there's a lot of people in contract years or here, wrapping it up. We got Gesicki only on one. So trying to figure out exactly, what happens next year. You also have the elevation of Gerard Mayo. You have the, bringing in of Bill O'Brien. You do wonder what the entire future holds beyond this season. I am really interested to see. And I know Greg Bedard wrote about this and alluded to it at Boston Sports Journal. You can check that out. Also, Bedard podcast will be coming out on this channel a little bit later today. And I know he's going to talk about it as well.
Yeah. So the good thing is I think they have a lot of players who are really good extension candidates kind of all over the board where having all that money, I think like this year, the emphasis is going to be on continuity, not so much as using that money to sign somebody else. So I actually have the list in front of me. So among the extension candidates, I think in the top tier of guys who could set the market at their positions, justifiably so. You got Mike Onwenu and Kyle Duggar, obviously. Those are two of the more consistent players you have on your team. I've said this on Twitter. Duggar, there are times where he has lapses, I think, in his awareness, where he gave up some of the most touchdowns of any player last year. And they weren't like, oh, this guy can't hang. It was really just kind of he had little brain farts or he'd make really small mistakes, like in the Vikings where Hawkinson came across the formation. Duggar noticed a second late and then just looked, which is rare for him, just really unathletic for a second, and he stumbled. Wide open touchdown. A couple of times where there were scramble plays and he took his eye off his man and the guy snuck away from him. So you want more consistency, but I think if he gives you that, There's no reason Kyle Duggar isn't the future of your secondary. Then you got guys who are going to be on much more modest contracts like Hunter Henry and Juwan Bentley, guys who you could probably see being leaders in their room who have been revered. Like Hunter Henry was a captain on the Chargers. Juwan Bentley is very clearly a leader for the defense as long as he's been around and the players he's been with. I think those are all guys you can realistically retain, especially with as much money as they have. Josh Uche is someone who's a little more complicated, I think, because you can't use him much on early downs unless you're playing a really pass-heavy team like the Bills, because he's a little easier to move in the ground game, and he hasn't shown at the pro level that he can consistently play off. Although in college, he showed that he has incredible range and coverage. I'd love to see him manifest as more of a, and this is what my projection was more of a Kyle Van Noy type, where he plays off in more rundowns, and then if it's obvious pass, you bump him down, let him rush the passer. So his market's going to be really interesting. I could see him being a low-key candidate to be moved if they really need a premium piece that another team could probably use more, that has a role for more of a pass rusher where the Patriots like their bigger guys. Then I have like a wait and see category. There's Devontae Parker. If he can stay healthy for you for a year and then you can get him on a cheap contract, that's fantastic. If he gets hurt, maybe isn't consistent, you move on. Kendrick Bourne, if he has his breakout year that everyone's praying he's going to have and has been praying he'd have for the past couple years, I could see him being the guy they want to bring back and use as more of a dynamic piece. And as you mentioned, Mike Gesicki, where you don't know what he's going to bring yet and how he's going to produce in this system, although it looks like this is probably going to be a good fit for him with someone like Bill O'Brien who would know how to utilize him and maximize his skill set while minimizing his weaknesses. So, like I said, I think there's a lot of players they could bring back and I think will bring back who are key cogs and guys who can contribute for the next few years. But I think there's also guys where you wouldn't be really upset if they left, and it would create holes, of course, but I don't think any that are so big that it's, something as big as like when Gilmore was traded or something like that, where you say this is a cavernous hole, and unless they dedicate serious capital to it, they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Hey, appreciate this comment. Taylor Kyle's building fans by the second, as if he didn't already have a million of them coming in here. Yes, we're very happy with Taylor as well. We're going to take a few of your questions to wrap it up here. So if you guys want to throw some in here, we'll fire it off. Ask Taylor anything you want to know here. He's obviously got encyclopedic knowledge of the Patriots roster and really most of the NFL at this point. It is interesting to me. One thing I did want to circle back to just in terms of this year. I know a lot of people were getting impatient. I think you're seeing right now, seeing that Cooks deal, seeing where patience does pay off. If you rushed right out the door and said, I got to go get me some Hopkins and threw a second round pick at him, and then you realized, shit, I could have had him for a fourth. Yeah.
Egg on your
Patriots fans would have been happy early. Right. They'd be a lot less happy when they find out, wow, we overpaid. You don't want to do that either. Odell Beckham is out there. The Patriots went to the workout. Odell is still kind of in a fantasy land in terms of what he's going to get. And a lot of teams are not interested, and a lot of teams are also running out of money. That's what happens in free agency. $15 million isn't just laying around in piles on your floor. Here, teams are, a lot of teams are up against the cap, and the ones who had the money spent the money. So again, that market continues to come down. You do wonder at what point does that happen? Here's one question. What do you think the probability that Hopkins happens is? Again, this is a tough one.
I think it's better than it was now that we know what the Cooks acquisition price was. I think that can definitely give you a little more confidence, especially because the Cardinals GM used to work for the Patriots, Monty Ossenfort. So I'd put I'm not good with math. I'd put the probability maybe somewhere in the 30s, 40s maybe. I think you can be somewhat optimistic, but it doesn't pass or approach that 50% threshold for me or higher, where I'm saying it's more likely than not that they're going to do it. But at the same time, that could shift because it seems like the Cardinals really do want to offload Hopkins, and the Patriots connection there, the fact that he's not going to be terribly expensive, and the fact that obviously true alpha receiver is on the board for them make it more likely. But like I've said, he doesn't offer that dynamic playmaking ability that I think a lot of people want. I don't want to say he's a name. Like, I'm not trying to disrespect DeAndre Hopkins. He's still an excellent player, one of the best out there. But what he gives you,
but it's not what people want someone to stretch the field and open things up, and Hopkins isn't necessarily that guy. Exactly. He's an outstanding receiver, but yes, it's different than what it is people think they're getting. You hear the name and you think you're getting one thing, you're getting something else that's great. right? But it isn't exactly that thing you want. Let's try to rapid fire through a few of these. Old man here has been dominating the chat, so let's go for it. What position, if any, should they double dip in the draft?
Oh, that's a fun one. I'd say tackle, because one, you got right tackle is still a need. Riley Reif is solid, but you don't know if he's going to be able to handle an entire season, especially since he played 10 games last year. So you literally don't have the tape to see if at this age he can hold up. And then Trent Brown is in the last year of his deal. Maybe he has a bounce back year and he does better and they re-sign him for another couple of years, and you have a solid situation there. But I'd like to see them at least have maybe some guys that are higher up where you feel better about their development, whereas now they've got a bunch of guys who look like they could be solid backups, but their upside isn't quite as high, considering someone like Calvin Anderson, as talented as he is. He's worked with Scarnecchia. When he was with the Broncos, he was with Monken. But he's had great offensive line coaches and still hasn't reached the potential that people hoped he'd have. So I think that's one place where it may not be sexy, but offensive tackle, they could definitely use some help long term.
All right, we know Gesicki coming in here on a 1-year deal. What do you think this means? Again, tight end is considered deep in this draft. So I would not be shocked here. And you're looking at Hunter Henry on the last year of his deal. So the cupboard is completely bare heading into 24 here. Likelihood that they go in and get a tight end in this year's draft on the early side.
Absolutely. I think that's a pretty high possibility, especially since there's a lot of guys who are dual threats, which is something I don't think they really have. Like Hunter Henry is okay as a run blocker and good as a receiver. Maybe you want somebody who's a good blocker and a really good receiver. And like we've said, Gesicki doesn't give you the dual threat, although he's versatile. I think Hunter Henry's an extension candidate. I don't see him leaving the team anytime soon. I think Mike Gesicki had to sign a prove-it deal because he disappeared last year because of their scheme. And although he's got the track record, you still, after a year where your production just completely falls off a cliff, as we saw with this market, no one's going to want to sign you to any breaking contracts. And I think that he could be re-signed if he's useful and they see like, okay, this is a guy who really works well in our scheme. But at the same time, I think having 3 tight ends, maybe not early necessarily, unless they fall in love with the guy. But if they go like 3rd round, 4th round, get a tight end, I'm not going to complain.
Yep. All right. Here's another one. Could you see the Patriots drafting a linebacker early because it'd be on brand for Belichick since he values that position? And I don't know how much he values it because that's been an area of need lately where they've been pretty thin.
Yeah, I just don't think so, considering one, I think Juwan Bentley is someone who is going to be affordable, fits their scheme really well, not a lot of other people's schemes. He's going to be your Mike for a long time in the middle of that defense, and they love to put their safeties next to him. So I think that if they're going to take a chance on a linebacker, especially with the depth that they already have with Jelani Tavai and Raekwon McMillan, maybe the Mac Wilson if he gets it together, maybe Chris Board if he shows he can play on defense rather than just being a special teamer. But I don't think it's going to be early, more because of the positional value. It's not big enough of a hole that I think they need to spend a 1st or a 2nd, because you could use that on a more premium position. Obviously, they don't necessarily go by that because they drafted a left guard, although that was a glaring area of need for them. So I wouldn't be shocked because it is Belichick, but I would much rather than wait till the 5th or the 6th to get a linebacker, because I think he can still be
totally fine.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree. I think you got to. We've discussed this. I think there's really 3 places of value you can go early in that 1st round. It's receiver, corner, or tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I think you go in another position there. Again, you better be getting Micah Parsons.
Right.
I think you got to be really careful.
And their top picks at linebacker too. Like it was Gerard Mayo, who was a genius, a captain in his 2nd season,
number 10 overall.
Which
yes,
seemed
absolutely.
rich, but he was a fantastic player.
And they traded up to get him.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then Jamie Collins obviously wasn't a 1st rounder, but he was their 1st pick in that draft, and he played every single down. So if they're getting somebody, it's going to be someone who can be a pass rusher, who's good.
Well, Hightower was a 1st round pick.
Hightower as well. Yep, that's right. So those guys are going to be the ones who are on the field every single down. So if they do, at least okay, maybe they didn't get an edge defender, but they get some pass rush productivity as well.
The good news is the hit rate is pretty high there too. So that's just based off of those ones there as well. Let's see if we can find another question or two before we do it. Let's see. I know this one's out there. I think I can answer this for you. You think if Gonzalez is there, you literally sprint to the phone. Yeah.
He's there in some mock
And
drafts.
it almost
insane.
doesn't matter who else is there.
Yeah.
If he's there at 14, you sprint to the phone, pick it up, and blurt his name out, and don't even take another call from another team.
Yeah, he's your Aqib Talib, he's your Gilmore, he's your guy where it doesn't matter what the body type is, you can put him on that guy and he'll be fine. Whereas I think Joey Porter is more of a JC Jackson where he's fantastic, he's got great ball skills, he's long, but you'd rather him up against the big guys rather than the fast guys because that's not his game. Whereas Gonzalez is just a freak athlete who can do whatever he wants. So I'm going Christian Gonzalez, but Joey Porter for their system would also be a great fit.
I'll throw this out there. This is a departure from last year. We'll give Old Man another whack at this because he's been all over the chat here. Could you see fullback making a return?
No, but I wish.
You like it?
I wish they did, but also Bill O'Brien isn't really a huge fullback guy. Who is the fullback on the roster in 2011? Lusaka Polite.
Jakob? Way back.
Yeah,
sorry,
way back. I only know this
Yeah.
because I played Madden. I would not have known the Patriots had a fullback on the roster back then. Otherwise, but I think they use mostly like Gronk's brother. I think it was Dan for a while in that role. So they're more like use a tight end as a fullback. Although, man, I'm never going to be mad at having a fullback on the roster. I'm an old school guy. I think it brings a lot more versatility than going through receivers or two tight ends, and that's why teams use fullbacks. But I don't see it happening.
I mean, look, you had Devlin all those years. You had, it's a thing that they've done.
Yeah, but that was more McDaniel's
scheme.
scheme. McDaniel's likes his fullbacks. That's why Jakob went to Vegas.
Yeah, no doubt. This is an interesting one that I think is fair to ask. You've seen some reports that, there was at least one report out there. Yeah, Zappy's going to come in and get to play and get to do his thing with the kind of assumption that it's max to lose. But it's not, you're not talking about etched in stone,
right.
There absolutely anything could happen. I personally, from covering the team myself and talking to people I talk to, I do not believe it is that Mac is ironclad by any means. The question isn't whether or not Mac is immovable. It's whether Zappy has anywhere near enough juice to supplant him, and that the ripple effects that would have, because you would be destroying an asset. If you knew Zappy was as good or you thought he was better, you should have looked to trade Mac before all of the QBs found homes this offseason and just made it seem like, it happened. But you can't go into camp, have him lose, put him on the bench. Now you've absolutely burned an asset that you just spent a first-round pick on.
Yeah,
but on the field, answer it two ways. One, could you see it? But two, is there enough from Zappy there to think he would even have a chance to be able to outperform Mac?
No, he's not.
Because some people dispute that.
He's not going to outperform Mac. Absolutely not. Like, these are Mac was a first round pick for a reason. Even if you hate Mac's game, even if you hate
was Zach Wilson.
He's a second. He should not have been. And that's okay. To be fair,
everybody thought he was.
Zach Wilson was an upside pick. No one was picking Mac Jones because they thought he was going to turn into Tom Brady. Not the world. I didn't like Zach Wilson very much. I think a lot of
people liked him. There's some people thought he was better than Lawrence. I mean,
yeah, those people probably aren't very good at their jobs, or they don't have a great hit rate. Because I think Zach Wilson was a huge project. If you liked his upside, sure, whatever. I thought the Jets picking him where they did was way too rich, and I think it's one of the reasons why the bus label was very unfair. Zach Wilson should not have been picked as high as he was, unless especially not with the necessarily, they don't have a quarterback guru who can come in and you're like, all right, this is a ball of clay. I'm going to turn into, a great player like McDaniels or a Bill O'Brien. So I think Mac Jones was a first-round pick for a reason. Bailey Zappi was a fourth-round pick for a reason. Bailey Zappi was very productive in a scheme that was very, very quarterback-friendly against not great competition. Now, to his credit, he fixed a lot of the mistakes and kind of deficiencies he had in college, and he still kept them competitive in games. If he made some quantum leap in year two where he was just more consistent, then I could probably see it. But just from a talent perspective, it's not even close.
I get it. I find it hilarious, and again, I respect your football analysis immensely. I just find it funny how, generally speaking, when having this conversation with people, that a fan base that watched Tom Brady for 20 plus years will say things like Mac was a first round pick and this guy was a fourth round pick, as if it matters.
Yeah.
I find that so interesting. That's like when you get to okay, I went to this college, I went to that college, terrific. But then when you get to your first job,
The rest doesn't matter anymore. It's just how you perform at that job. So yeah, that the first round pick gives you the opportunity, and you're handed things based on the promise and the potential. But then at that point, you got to earn it. I do not believe if Zappy's coming in there and slinging the ball all over the place, and Mac looks not great and is complaining and isn't on the same page with O'Brien, if Bill isn't like, okay, Mac, you're going to sit over there, and then Bailey's going to do all of the quarterbacking for now. I don't think there's anything that would prevent him from doing it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I absolutely think if Zappy showed up, looked better, Bill goes with
Yeah,
Zappy.
and I'm never going to say that Bill is going to keep somebody because of his draft stock. I'm starkly against that. All I'm saying is that Mac was a first-round pick because he had a much higher floor. And Zappy still has to just catch up to that floor. Zappy's advantage last year was he was more of a yes sir, no sir kind of guy. And Mac Jones came from Bama, had winning experience, actually had the pedigree. You know, you could debate this because it's, he's still a young player, but yeah, he wants to win. And you'd like a quarterback who's going to speak up. You know, he could definitely keep his emotions in check better. I think that's just what a lot of young quarterbacks go through, especially when they come from cultures of winning, then come into the NFL and start losing, and they just are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm trying my best, and, you freaking gave me Matt Patricia. So all I'm saying is I think Zappy has such a long way to go, and even physically, he's not going to ever be Mac Jones. Everybody likes to talk about how Mac doesn't have a good arm. He can make every single throw on the field. The difference is he can't make it when he's on the run or when he's falling down. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you see, oh my God, this guy's arm strength is crazy. Or, he's not going to fit it into a keyhole 40 yards downfield all the time. That's not his game for sure. He can still make all the throws. Bailey Zappe legitimately has deficiencies in his arm where there's certain throws you don't want him making, and you really, really want to keep him inside the structure of the offense, although he does also have pretty good improvisational skills. So I'm saying if Bailey comes in and plays better and he's more consistent, yeah, he's probably going to be the starter because they don't care about upside if you're doing your job. But I don't think Mac is inconsistent enough with and will be with someone like Bill O'Brien that's an actual concern where you're thinking, oh, well, he's just going to be a pain in the ass. We might as well put Zappe in because he's just going to get the job done. I don't see that being the case.
Okay, we will ask this one. It's almost a silly one to ask, Taylor, but I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah, ask it. Go ahead, ask
it. Quentin Johnson or Zay
Flowers?
Do you take expected cost into consideration here, which is, and again, it's really hard to guess. I always think this: mock drafts are always wrong early on quarterbacks and late on receivers. The early mocks don't have nearly enough quarterbacks going in the early parts of the draft, and then you're like, oh no, wait, now I'm hearing 5 are going in this same quarterback class 3 months ago, it was maybe 2 in the top 10. Now it's 5 inside the top 8. Okay, right. So that's just how this goes. But with receiver, I think also people are like, it's not a big receiver class. I don't think it's going to go, and I do think everyone's changed their thinking on receiver. So now what might have been in your mind a second round talent at that position isn't anymore, because people value the position and the ability to draft somebody young, control their contract, and have them for 5 years rather than pay the premium it takes to get a high-level talent at that position now. So I believe that there's going to be a crazy run on receivers. I saw some mocks that had 2 going in the first round. I'm telling you there's going to be 5 to 7, and that's just how that's how it happens. There's going to be at least 5 of them.
That'd be insane.
And a lot of them are going to go late, which means right now Zay Flowers might feel like a reach at 14, but when it becomes draft time and all of a sudden 3 receivers have gone, you're like, oh my God, I hope Flowers is still there. So I always think it's going to be a little tighter than you think in terms of this position. There will be a positional run because a lot of teams want it. A lot of teams will trade in to get it, trade up to get their guy. But at 14, Flowers seems high based on current projections. Would you feel comfortable taking him there, even though Johnson has the better pedigree?
Yes, because I think Zay Flowers can genuinely change the entire look of your offense. Real quick, I want to backtrack because I saw somebody talk about how Zappe made all these great throws. Go back and watch Zappe's highlights and see how many of his great plays were wide open. Just going to backtrack real quick.
It was like watching a college quarterback. Literally, it really was.
It was like play action. Literally, Devontae Parker could not be more.
Hey, open. That guy's 30 yards open, right?
And he was also missing, like the one where Jacoby Myers got wide open against the Bears, and he had to adjust to the throw and crawl into the end zone. So real quick, keep it in context. Zappe wasn't making a bunch of wild throws, although he did execute them. Anyway, Zay Flowers, I think, can come in and immediately contribute. Like there's going to be a learning curve, but he's not someone who's you have to teach him how to run routes. You have to teach him how to attack the ball in the air. He has like very natural receiver skills. I'm sure he's worked at them, but when you watch him, it doesn't look like there's a ton in terms of just the raw position that, the gap is big where you're like, all right, he's going to need a couple years. He's going to come in and he's going to play and he's going to compete. Quentin Johnson is more like a Cordero Patterson to me, where he's a freak athlete. He's great after the catch. He's a big guy. His body type is rare. If you give him to a good receiver coach, I'm sure that, if you do choose him in the first round, he may be able to live up to that. But he is a legitimate project where I don't think he's a very good route runner or a very good separator in terms of the technique of his
Just
routes.
like DK Metcalf wasn't, right?
No, I think DK was different because he had a limited route tree, but it was also like, okay, but if you are DK Metcalf, like I think that's just such a different thing where if you can run 3 routes as DK Metcalf, you're fine. And a lot of the time that's what he does. I just don't think Quentin Johnson is on the same level remotely that DK Metcalf was on at that point. I also just don't think they're the same caliber of athlete, although I think Johnson is better after the catch. But Zay, I think, is much, much more pro ready and just has a lot more skills you could plug into an offense and contribute. Whereas I think Quentin Johnson's going to have more like scheme touches or more like you lob it up to him and just you're like, hey, go make a play.
Yep. He's the prototypical receiver, size, speed, body, but Flowers is electric. And again, I've seen Flowers play in person on more than one occasion. He really is something here. We're going to wrap it up. I think let's see if we can get one in under the buzzer. Let's see. Scanning. I think we're out. Someone said Zay comp would be. I did want to ask that. Somebody put up there, if that's the last one. What's your Zay NFL comp?
I hate saying this. It's kind of mean, but like it's Antonio Brown to me. It's just those smaller dudes who play like they've got a screw loose. I love receivers who act like
ding.
Yeah, there you go. It's right there. It's so obvious. Like anytime they make a big play, they just go crazy, and I love that. Like Kendrick, kind of like that Kendrick Bourne thing where they just juice you up a lot. And on top of it, he's that little guy who also goes above the rim and makes plays where you're like, yeah, he looks small, but like he's playing bigger than most players on your team who have 5 inches on him. So yeah, it's a lofty comparison, but it's so hard to ignore, especially when they work out together.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks, guys, for the questions. That was a lot of fun. We'll keep trying to pop on here because I know Patriots is on everybody's minds, and as free agency continues on, we do want to be able to be here to provide coverage for you. You're also going to get a ton more stuff on our channel with, as I said, Bedard coming out. He's got some really good information. Check him out. Subscribe to his pod. It's always interesting. I think he's got Greg Cosell on, who's always interesting and always has some good info himself. So check that out. Patriots Beat's going to be live multiple times this week. So that's always fun. Those guys killed it last week. Check out Mike Cadlick's mock draft right now. A lot of fan service there if you want to check it out. Trust me, you'll be happy with the results if you're a Patriots fan there, addressing all of the team's needs, including a trade. And make sure you check out Taylor Kyles. Follow him on Twitter. And, for all of his up-to-the-minute analysis of literally everything going on in the football world. And check us out at CLNS Media, where you will get updated kind of written work and film study and all of the other stuff that Taylor excels at. Last reminder for everybody, go sign up, please, if you're interested, and do it by going to fanduel.com/Boston. If this is your thing, take advantage of the special offer. Bet 5, get 200 in bonus bets. Again, if you go to fanduel.com/Boston and sign up and register and make that initial deposit, they will know we sent you, and that makes them happy, and that makes us happy. And we get to keep coming out here and talking with you fine people, which we always enjoy doing. Closing thoughts here?
I think we kind of covered it all. Go Pats. Maybe
we did.
Maybe we'll get some fun news soon. Rock Ya-Sin.
You're still holding on hope, huh?
Hell yeah, man. I'm trying to manifest. Let's make it. My girlfriend always tells me, you got to manifest. Speak it into the universe. Do I believe it? No. But hey, let's see if it works. It's not going to hurt.
Again, what's funny is like you wait this long on someone like this and there's no interest. You got to think that they're just like, I was never in on this guy, because by now they could have had it if they wanted it, right?
Well, no one has him yet, so I have no idea what
exactly.
That's what I mean. So maybe they're just waiting for the price to get as low as they can. I mean, we already know he's a good scheme fit. He excelled in Patrick Graham's scheme. So, and He actually retweeted it. He retweeted my tweet saying he was a good man cover corner, and then a bunch of other people responded in the league. So I'm like, okay, if NFL guys are saying like you're that dude, who am I to judge? I'm just a guy with a computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Again, thank you guys for hanging out. It was actually very lively and fun. I appreciate all of the chat commentary. I also liked how civil everybody kept it. I know people get really worked up and angry over this sort of stuff, so we do appreciate you guys playing nice in the sandbox as well, which is always fun. So awesome time. We'll look for an opportunity to jump back on here tomorrow. And as always, we will be here if there's breaking news as soon as we can assemble the news team and get you out there as soon as we something does happen. If something big happens to the Patriots, we'll jump back on here and talk about it for sure. That's going to do it. Again, T Kyle's over there. Follow Taylor Kyle's on Twitter and